This past week, I was watching a video from a comedy group on YouTube that I watch quite a bit. The video is entitled, "Men Won't Ask for Help." It starts off with three guys at the grill. The guy who's at the grill doing most of the work then asks one of his friends, Alan, to help cut some links for the grill. So Alan goes into the kitchen, and his friends, quite immediately, but pretty close to it, hear a loud ouch. Comes back out, and it turns out, just above his wedding band, he's cut off his finger. His friends ask him pretty calmly, "Do you want some help? Do you need to go to the hospital?" "No, I'm good. I can pull through." Immediately, the friends look at him and they're like, "Yeah, that's the right way to do things. To keep, to push through, not needing any help, not troubling you." And then asks the other friend, Adam, for help, and immediately Adam catches his arm on fire. And with a wonderful post-editing production, comic cartoon flame going all the way up his arm, they asked him, "Are you all right? Do you need help? Can we put that out?" And he said, "No, I'm good. And again, they all say what a good job, not troubling anybody and all that. Then we turn back to Ben, who's been grilling this whole time, who all of a sudden has a sharp pain in his chest. Realizes pretty quickly it's a heart attack. And his friends ask if he wants to go to the hospital, and instead he elects to go under the house, curl up, and die quietly. Again, friends are saying, "Oh, this is good, not troubling anybody." If you look in their eyes as Alan looks at his severed finger, as Adam looks at the flames coming up his arm, you can see in their eyes just a little hint, thinking maybe this wasn't the right choice. Maybe I should have asked for help in this moment. Now, this group, Viva La Dirtly, do a lot of videos that try to promote thinking about mental health. So the point that they're raising in this video is quite clear. You need help, ask for it. And that's never more true than with our relationship with God. Now, many of us do struggle to ask for help from each other when we need it. We all struggle when it comes to asking for God's help. The thing is, we need God's help. We cannot make it by without God's help. And that's the very thing that Paul is teaching us in Romans today. We are in such need of God's help that we cannot even save ourselves. As Paul tells us, when we are faced with a choice of doing the wrong thing, we make that choice, even though we do not want to. We see this in our lives. Whether we struggle with things from the realm of substance abuse to the realm of simply Candy Crush and boredom. We all struggle with addiction. We all struggle to do what is right versus what is wrong. That's how deep the root of sin is in us. We don't just have to look at our own individual lives to see this. What we have to do is look at everything that is going on in the world around us to know sin is a problem. When we can't save ourselves, because we can't, God can. God died and rose again for us so that we could die to sin, so that we could rise from that sin, from those things that, as Paul tells us, we secretly hate. Rise from that into a new life with God, a new life full and abounding that relationship that we have with our Lord. It's easy to say we need help. We do. We need help. It's even easier to say that we need God's help. Because we need that even more. The path ahead of us is never an easy one, even if we do everything that God wishes for us to do. This is a lesson that we learned just this past season, in the season of Easter. And we learn it again in our gospel reading today. Our gospel, which is still pretty close to the beginning of Jesus's ministry. We're talking about a reading to put it in context with what we've been seeing with Matthew so far. This is after the Sermon on the Mount, beginning of Jesus's ministry, after a little bit of healing he did after that, after his sending the disciples out into the world to bring others in. The end of that speech to them that we saw just last week. And now, just before our passage today, John the Baptist, his disciples, going out to see Jesus, going out to report to John the Baptist all that it is that Jesus is doing. Jesus, in this moment, talks again about our need for God, but also struggle we have in following God's way. Because the path ahead, as Jesus tells us, is a yoke and a burden. Jesus wouldn't call it that, a yoke and a burden, if it wasn't so. Yet with God's help, this yoke is easy, and this burden is light. Put another way, many of us try to say from time to time that God doesn't give us any more than we can handle. Now, what I've learned from my own experience and the wisdom of my friends and colleagues is that that is not true. What is true is that God gives us nothing more than we can handle with God's help, with our relying on, our leaning on God. Yoke and burden are still there. They're just a lot easier and lighter. We rely on God to help us with them. Because it is a yoke and a burden, God isn't just some magic fix. God isn't a get out of jail free card. Except in those times, as a wise colleague of mine pointed out, But we do see God doing that. We see that in our reading in Genesis today. There we see one of Abraham's servants going out to find Isaac, the wife. And even though this servant isn't part of the immediate family of Abraham, he still turns to the God of Abraham for help. And God is there to provide that help, to provide him guidance in finding this wife for Isaac. What makes this different from just some magical fix, we get out of jail free card, is that at the same time, much in this scenario is asked of Rebekah, the soon-to-be wife of Isaac. We see that demonstrated in our response to our Old Testament reading, our response in the psalm this morning. Our psalm was written to be a royal wedding psalm. Some think, though there's no proof of this one way or another, that the reference made to Tyre in this psalm connects it to Jezebel. Jezebel, who later on in the Old Testament, the Tanakh, is King Ahab's wife. Now, Jezebel was one of the ones that made things difficult, that went up against the great prophet Elijah, as he went head to head against all the prophets of Baal, and proved that God of Israel, is the one true God out there. Now, if this connection in the psalm is true, what we know from her actions, what we know from her conflict with Elijah, is that Jezebel didn't listen to these words. She didn't abandon her own ways, her own gods, begin to follow the way of the king of Israel. Those ways being the ways of God, of Abraham, Isaac, Israel. She ultimately didn't do what this psalm said, if this is true. She didn't follow in the ways of God instead of her own. The question for us then is, will we be like her, or will we be different? Following God is not an easy thing. It requires sacrifice, requires moving beyond ourselves. At the same time, we desperately need God. We can do nothing without the Lord. We can't even lift our yoke, carry our burden without the help of God. Let me lift the veil here a little bit. Those of us ordained, those of us in ordained ministry, we struggle with this too. We struggle to turn to God for help. And that's why, for us, as we go through the discernment process, as it gets drilled to us in our seminary training, we're told to make sure to take that time, to take the time of retreat, generally recommended to be at least once a month. Because what this retreat does is it roots us into our work, it roots us into the work of God. It allows us to develop that relationship so that when we go through those hard times, we will turn to God for help as we need to. Many of my friends and colleagues still ask for a little bit in their letter of agreement to spell out specifically that they are to have this time, this once a month retreat, for this very reason. There are many dioceses out there, including our own, who have provisions, the standard parish letter of agreement, the priest to be able to go out and take this time for retreat, take this time to rely and lean on God as we all so desperately. So that's the truth. We need this time. We need this time to be with God. We need this time so that we are prepared to ask for help from our Lord when we need it. The thing is, you all need this time too. So don't be hesitant to turn to God for help when you need it. At the same time, know that this path, that following the Lord, is never an easy task. You will need help on the way. We cannot save ourselves on our own. We need God. So take the time to build God's presence in your lives. Take the time to strengthen that bond and connection with the Lord. If you do this, if you strengthen the relationship with God, and in those times of great need, you will be ready to lean on God. Take that help that we all so desperately need. That will be the only way that you can make it through those times. The only way we get through the tough times is through God's help. So lean on God and ask for that help.